The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss, and a thin layer of cold mist rolled across the landing pad. Daniel Hayes stepped out alone. He wore a plain gray jacket, carried one small bag over his shoulder, and held a worn paper journal in his left hand. The journal had a leather cover that was scratched and faded. He had owned it since he was 12. The landing pad belonged to Velmari Academy, the most famous school in the Galactic Concord. It floated above a city made of pale blue crystal, and the city itself sat on a moon called Salathis. Daniel had never seen anything like it. The buildings rose like tall glass towers, and the sunlight bent through them in slow rainbows. He took it all in for a moment. Then he kept walking. A small floating drone met him at the edge of the pad. It blinked a green light and spoke in a polite voice. "Welcome, Student Hayes. Please follow me to the main hall. The headmaster is expecting you." Daniel nodded and followed. The main hall was huge. The ceiling was so high that Daniel could not see the top. Long banners hung from the walls, each one showing the symbol of a different species in the Concord. There were 50 banners in total. The newest one, hanging at the far end, showed a small blue and green planet, Earth. The hall was full of students. Tall students, short students, students with feathers, with scales, with skin that glowed softly in the cool air. They were all talking, laughing, and carrying bright data pads. The sound was loud and busy. Then someone noticed Daniel. The hall went quiet. It happened slowly at first. One student turned and pointed. Then another. Then a third. Whispers began to spread like wind through tall grass. Daniel kept walking, calm and steady, his eyes fixed on the front of the hall where a tall figure in dark robes stood waiting. A loud voice cut through the silence. "That is the human?" Daniel did not look. He already knew the voice was talking about him. The speaker was a tall student with smooth silver skin and bright golden eyes. He wore a crisp uniform with 3 stripes on the sleeve, the mark of a top-ranked student. His name was Telon Voss, though Daniel did not know that yet. Telon stepped out from a small group of friends and walked closer. He looked Daniel up and down. "It's so small," Telon said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I thought humans were supposed to be a warrior race. This one looks like a strong wind would knock him over." The crowd laughed. Not all of them, but enough. The sound rolled through the hall like a wave. Daniel stopped walking. He turned his head slowly and looked at Telon. He did not look angry. He did not look hurt. He just looked. His eyes were calm and gray, like the sky before rain. He held Telon's gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he gave a small, polite nod and kept walking toward the front of the hall. Telon blinked. He had expected the human to argue, to shout, or maybe to cry. He had not expected the human to nod. The figure in dark robes was Headmaster Avrelin. He was very old, with skin the color of dry stone and eyes that were soft and kind. He bowed slightly when Daniel reached him. "Welcome to Velmari Academy, Student Hayes," he said. "We are honored to have the first human exchange student in our halls." "Thank you, sir," Daniel said. His voice was quiet but clear. "I am honored to be here." The headmaster smiled. He turned to address the hall. "Students, please welcome our newest member. Daniel Hayes comes to us from the planet Earth. He will study with us for 1 full school year. I expect each of you to treat him with the same respect you would show any guest." A few students clapped. Most did not. Telon and his friends were already whispering and laughing again. The headmaster either did not hear them or chose not to. Daniel was given his room key, his class schedule, and a map of the academy. The drone led him to his dormitory on the 3rd floor. The room was small but clean. There was a bed, a desk, a window, and a soft blue light that came from the ceiling. Daniel set down his bag and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was deep purple. 2 moons hung low on the horizon, and far away he could see a band of bright stars stretching across the dark. None of the stars were the ones he knew. The constellations of Earth were thousands of light years behind him. He sat down at the desk, opened his journal, and pulled out a black pen. He began to write. He did not write about the laughter. He did not write about Telon. He wrote about the shape of the buildings, the angle of the sunlight, the sound of the alien voices in the hall, the way the air smelled faintly of mint and metal. He wrote down every small detail he had noticed since stepping off the shuttle. He wrote for almost 2 hours. When he finally closed the journal, the moons had moved across the sky and the academy had gone quiet. Daniel set the journal carefully beside his bed and lay down. He had come a very long way, farther than any human his age had ever traveled. He had been chosen for a reason, though even he did not yet understand the full shape of that reason. But he understood one thing. He had not come here to be liked. He had come here to learn. And tomorrow, the learning would begin. The first bell rang at sunrise, a soft chime that drifted through every room in the academy. Daniel was already awake. He had been awake for an hour, watching the pale light grow on the wall of his small room. He dressed in his plain academy uniform, picked up his journal, and walked down to the dining hall. The dining hall was the size of a small stadium. Long tables stretched across the floor, and floating trays of food drifted between them. The air smelled of warm bread, sweet fruit, and something spicy that Daniel could not name. He picked up a tray, chose a few simple things he recognized, and sat at an empty table near the window. He ate slowly, watching the room. He noticed which students sat together and which sat alone. He noticed Telon Voss in the center of the hall, surrounded by a circle of friends, all of them looking at Daniel and whispering. Daniel did not look back. He just kept eating. His first class was comparative chemistry. The lab room had high ceilings and rows of clean white tables. Each table had a set of beakers, tools, and small glowing samples. Daniel sat at his assigned spot. The instructor, a tall, thin alien with 4 long arms, gave the day's lesson and then handed out the materials for an experiment. Mix the samples in the correct order, the instructor said. One mistake, and your result will be useless. Begin. Daniel reached for his samples. He paused. 2 of the small bottles had been switched. The labels were correct, but the colors inside the bottles did not match what the labels described. Someone had moved the contents while he was listening to the lesson. Daniel did not look up. He did not check who was watching. He simply changed his plan. He worked from memory, using the colors instead of the labels, and mixed everything in the correct chemical order. His result came out a perfect bright green, exactly as the instructor had described. The student next to him, who had been watching from the corner of his eye, frowned in surprise. Across the room, Telon Voss was not smiling. The second class was physical trials. The students changed into running suits and gathered on a long track outside. The track was a hard course, with high walls, wide jumps, and sharp turns. Telon and his friends had whispered to the trainer that the human wanted a challenge. So the trainer placed Daniel in the most difficult group. Run when the bell sounds, the trainer said. Finish or fail. The bell sounded. The other students shot forward like arrows. They were faster than Daniel. Much faster. Their bodies were built for speed, with longer legs and stronger muscles. Daniel did not try to match them. He ran at his own steady pace. He cleared the walls slowly but cleanly. He took the jumps with care. He did not stop. He did not slow down. He did not rest. Halfway through, 2 of the faster students were already sitting on the ground, breathing hard. By the final stretch, 3 more had given up. Daniel passed them one by one, still at the same steady pace. He finished the course in the middle of the pack, but he was the only student in his group who had not stopped once. The trainer marked his card and looked at him for a long moment. Hayes, the trainer said, how are you not tired? Daniel wiped sweat from his face and gave a small shrug. I am tired, sir. I just kept going. The trainer made a small note on his pad. He did not say anything else. That afternoon, in the dining hall, Telon finally lost his patience. He walked over to Daniel's table with 3 friends behind him. He slammed his hand on the table. Stand up, human, Telon said. Prove to all of us that your kind are not cowards. Fight one of us. Right now. The hall went quiet again. Daniel was eating a bowl of soup. He set down his spoon carefully. He looked up at Telon. His face was calm. I do not need to prove anything to you, Daniel said. His voice was soft. Stand up, Telon said again, louder. No, Daniel said. He picked up his spoon and went back to his soup. Telon's silver skin flushed darker. He looked around the hall. Everyone was watching now. He could not back down. But Daniel was not giving him anything to push against. Telon had expected fear, anger, or shouting. Instead, he got a quiet boy eating soup. After a long moment, Telon turned and walked back to his table, muttering under his breath. His friends followed, looking confused. The hall slowly returned to normal noise, but the silence had felt strange. Something had shifted, though no one could quite name it. A student from a nearby table leaned over. She had soft blue skin, large dark eyes, and gills along her neck. Her name was Maria, though Daniel did not know that yet either. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. "I am fine, thank you," Daniel said. She watched him for a moment. "He will not stop. You know that." Daniel thought about the question. Then he gave her a small, polite smile. "Because that is what he wants," he said. Maria did not have an answer to that. She watched him finish his soup, then quietly went back to her own meal. That night, in his room, Daniel opened his journal and wrote down every small detail he had learned about the academy that day. The names, the faces, the patterns, the schedule of the cleaning drones, the angles of the security cameras. He had not come to fight. Not yet. He had come to watch. 3 weeks into the school year, the rain came to Salathis. It was not water rain. It was a soft fall of pale silver dust that drifted down from the high clouds and made the crystal towers of the city shine like 1,000 small mirrors. The students complained because the dust got into their hair and their books. Daniel walked through it slowly on his way to morning class, holding out his hand to let the silver flakes land on his palm. He had never seen anything like it. He wrote about it later that night. By now, the academy had settled into a strange rhythm around him. The mockery had not stopped. It had only changed shape. Telon no longer shouted across the dining hall. He whispered. He left small insults on Daniel's desk before class. He spread quiet stories that humans were a stupid race that had only joined the Concord because someone had taken pity on them. The other students listened. Some believed it. Some did not. Daniel heard everything and said nothing. He was getting top marks in every class. That was what bothered Telon most. The human, who had been laughed at on his first day, was now scoring higher on exams than students who had been at the academy for 3 years. Daniel never raised his hand. He never spoke unless a teacher called on him. He just took his exams quietly and turned them in. The scores spoke for themselves. In comparative philosophy class, the instructor handed back a major exam. The exam was on an old Velmari text written in a dead language by a philosopher who had lived 2,000 years ago. Daniel had scored a perfect mark. Telon had scored 81. That same afternoon, Telon filed a formal complaint with the headmaster. The complaint accused Daniel of cheating. It said that no human could possibly understand the philosopher's text well enough to score perfectly. It demanded a hearing. The hearing was held in the Academy Council room. The room had a high curved ceiling and a long table where 5 senior teachers sat. Daniel stood on one side. Telon stood on the other. The headmaster sat at the center. Maria was in the small audience, watching with her hands folded tightly in her lap. So was a quiet teacher named Instructor Haven, who taught comparative biology. He had asked to attend. The headmaster spoke first. Student Voss has accused Student Hayes of cheating on the philosophy exam. Student Voss, please explain your reasoning. Telon straightened his uniform. He spoke smoothly, with confidence. He said that the philosopher's text was famously difficult. He said that even the Academy's best students struggled with it. He said that no human, from a planet that joined the Concord less than 10 years ago, could possibly understand it without help. The teachers listened. The headmaster turned to Daniel. Student Hayes, do you have a response? Daniel looked at Telon. Then he looked at the headmaster. He spoke softly. May I ask Student Voss one question, sir? The headmaster nodded. Daniel turned. Telon, in the 3rd chapter, the philosopher uses a single word that has 2 meanings in the old language. One meaning is light, and the other meaning is truth. He uses it 3 times in a single paragraph. Each time, it means something different. What does the word mean the second time? Telon opened his mouth. He closed it again. The room was silent. The teachers leaned forward. Telon tried to answer. He guessed light. The instructor of the philosophy class shook her head, just once, very small. Daniel waited. Then he answered the question himself. He answered in the old language first, then in the common Concord tongue, then in a 3rd language used only by senior scholars. He explained why the second meaning was different from the first and the third. He explained which of the philosopher's later writings supported his answer. He spoke for 2 minutes, calmly and clearly, and when he finished, the council room was completely quiet. The headmaster looked down at his notes for a long moment. Then he looked at Telon. Student Voss, he said, the complaint is dismissed. You will write a formal apology to Student Hayes by tomorrow morning. Telon's silver skin went pale. He bowed quickly and walked out without a word. The doors closed behind him. Mireya found Daniel in the hallway after the hearing. The other students had not heard about it yet. but they would soon. She looked at him with a strange expression on her face, somewhere between wonder and worry. Why? She asked. You could have stopped him weeks ago. You could have shown them what you can do on the first day. Why did you stay quiet? Daniel thought about it. He looked out the tall window at the silver dust still falling on the city. On Earth, he said, the loudest voice in the room is rarely the one worth listening to. My grandfather told me that when I was a child. I have always remembered it. Haven't sat very still for a long time. Then he closed the file, stood up, and walked to the headmaster's office. He had something the headmaster needed to hear. The warning came at the start of the 7th week. It came not as a siren, but as a soft red light that began to glow on every wall of the academy at exactly the same moment. The light pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Students looked up from their meals, their books, their conversations. The teachers stopped teaching mid-sentence. Across the city of Salathis, every public screen blinked once, and then went dark before showing a single line of text. Concord Emergency Protocol. All Academy personnel report to Main Hall. Daniel was in the Academy library when the light began to pulse. He closed the book he was reading, slid it neatly back onto the shelf, and walked to the main hall with the other students. He did not run. He did not push. But his eyes were sharp now, scanning every face, every door, every window. The main hall filled within minutes. Thousands of students from every class stood shoulder to shoulder. Talon was there, but he was not laughing. His silver skin looked gray. The headmaster stood at the front of the hall on a raised platform. Beside him stood 3 senior officers from the Concord Defense Fleet, their uniforms dark and their faces serious. The headmaster raised a hand, and the hall went quiet. Students, he said, what I am about to tell you is not a drill. 2 hours ago, a long-range scanner in the outer system detected an incoming object. The object is a fleet of automated mining ships. The fleet is very old. We believe it was abandoned by an extinct species over 400 years ago. Its main programming has broken down. It now treats every world it approaches as a target to be mined. A wave of voices rose through the hall. The headmaster waited until they faded. The fleet is on a direct path to our moon. It will reach Salathis in 19 hours. The hall went silent again. This time, it was the silence of fear. A senior officer stepped forward. He was tall, with deep blue skin and short gray hair. His voice was calm but heavy. We have already attempted to stop the fleet. 3 squadrons of Concord defense ships have engaged it. Every weapon we have used has failed. The fleet's outer hull is built from a metal we no longer know how to make. It does not break. It does not bend. Energy weapons are absorbed. Physical strikes bounce off. We are trying everything we can think of. So far, nothing has worked. He paused. We have called every major academy in the Concord for help. Velmari is one of them. We need every clever mind here, working on this problem, right now. Talon looked sick. He sat down slowly on a bench. His top-ranked title meant nothing today. The galaxy's most advanced ships could not break the hull. What was a student supposed to do? The headmaster spoke again. Teams have already begun work in the upper labs. If any of you have ideas, take them to your instructors. Time is short. Please return to your dormitories now and remain calm. The students began to leave. Slowly at first, then faster, the hall emptied. Daniel did not move. He stood near the back of the hall, his journal pressed against his chest, his eyes fixed on the floor. He was thinking very hard. Maria found him there. Are you coming back to the dormitory? In a moment, Daniel said softly. She left. Daniel stood alone in the empty hall. Above him, a large screen showed a slow video of the rogue fleet drifting through space. The ships were huge. They were dark gray, scarred from centuries of micrometeors, but their hulls were still smooth and unbroken. Daniel watched the video for a long time. He was thinking about something his grandfather had once told him on a fishing trip. They had been sitting on a wooden dock in the cold morning, and his grandfather had said something strange. Something about how to fight a thing that you cannot beat in a straight fight. You do not break it, his grandfather had said. You confuse it. By the morning bell, he had filled 14 pages. He looked at what he had written. He read it through 3 times. He tested it in his head, line by line. It would work. He was almost sure, but the others would not like it. He closed the journal. He stood up. His face was tired but calm. He walked down to the main hall. Another emergency assembly had been called. The brightest minds of 50 species filled the hall, all of them tired, all of them out of ideas. The fleet was now only 12 hours away. The hall was filled with low, hopeless voices. The headmaster stood at the front, his shoulders bent. He asked, almost as a final hope, if anyone had anything new to suggest. Silence answered him. Then, from the very back of the hall, a small voice spoke. Headmaster, I think I can help. Every head turned. Daniel was standing alone, his journal in his hand. But you are not going to like the answer. 1,000 faces turned toward the back of the hall. Some looked confused. Some looked annoyed. A few of Talon's friends laughed under their breath. The human, of all people, was offering to help. The human, who had been the joke of the academy for 7 weeks, was walking down the long aisle with a paper journal in his hand. Daniel did not look at any of them. He climbed the 3 steps to the platform. He set his journal carefully on the lectern beside the headmaster. The headmaster studied his face for a moment, then gave a small nod. Speak, Student Hayes. Daniel turned to face the hall. His hands were steady. His voice was soft, but the room had gone so quiet that every word reached the back wall. The fleet is too strong to break, he said. Every ship in the Concorde has tried. Every weapon has failed. So I think we should stop trying to break it. A murmur went through the hall. The hulls were built to absorb energy, Daniel said. When you fire at them, they take that energy and use it to grow stronger. The harder we hit, the harder they become. So I think we should not hit them at all. A senior officer spoke up. Then what do you suggest, boy? We let them mine the moon. No, sir, Daniel said. I suggest we confuse them. The hall went silent again. Daniel opened his journal. The fleet is not a living thing. It is a machine. Its programming is old and broken. It looks at every object near it, decides if that object is a threat or a resource, and acts. Right now, it sees our defense ships as threats, so it defends itself. It sees the moon as a resource, so it goes to the moon. Its decisions are simple, fast, and clean. He turned a page in his journal. On Earth, my ancestors lived for 2 million years on a world full of things that wanted to eat them. They were not the fastest. They were not the strongest. They had no claws or sharp teeth. They survived because they were impossible to predict. They could be quiet, then loud. Calm, then angry. They could lie. They could pretend. They could hide in plain sight. The animals that hunted them could not understand them, because their thoughts did not move in straight lines. He looked up. That is what I want to send into the fleet. Not a weapon. A signal. A signal made of human noise. The hall was very still. Daniel began to write equations on the wide screen behind the lectern. The math was strange. It twisted. It doubled back on itself. It used patterns from old human songs, old human languages, old human dreams. He showed how the signal would carry no clear meaning, no clear order, no clear command. It would be alive in a way that no machine had ever met before. The fleet's targeting system will try to read the signal, Daniel said. It will look for a threat pattern. It will not find one. It will look for a resource pattern. It will not find one either. It will look for any pattern, and it will keep looking, because human thought does not match any pattern. Once the system is busy trying to understand us, it will not be able to do anything else. It will lock up, the way an old computer locks up when you ask it to do too many things at once. A scholar from the front row stood up. He was old, with long white robes and 4 eyes. You were saying we should hand the most advanced enemy in our system a puzzle it cannot solve. Yes, sir, Daniel said. We grew up solving each other. They never have. Instructor Haven stood up slowly. Headmaster, I have read his notes. The math is sound. I checked it 3 times this morning. Headmaster Avrelin looked at the screen for a long time. Then he looked at Daniel. How long do you need? 3 hours to build the signal, Daniel said. If your engineers help. The next 3 hours moved very fast. Daniel worked in the upper labs with 12 of the Academy's top engineers. They built the signal piece by piece, using his notes as a map. The engineers asked questions. Daniel answered them. He did not raise his voice. He did not hurry. He just worked. The engineers, who had laughed at him in the dining hall a month ago, found themselves following his lead without thinking about it. At the 11th hour, the signal was ready. A single Concorde scout ship carried it to the edge of the system and broadcast it directly into the rogue fleet. The fleet was 40 minutes from the moon. For the first 10 seconds, nothing happened. The senior officers in the command room held their breath. The students in the main hall watched a wide screen that showed the fleet's path. Daniel stood quietly at the back, his journal closed in his hands. Then, slowly, the fleet's path began to change. Its targeting lights flickered. Its weapons drew back into the hulls. Its engines slowed, then sped up, then slowed again. It was not damaged. It was simply lost. Its old, broken programming was trying to read the human signal and could not. It looked for a threat. It looked for a resource. It looked for a pattern. It found nothing. It froze. The fleet drifted past the moon. It missed Salathis by a wide arc. It floated quietly into deep space, its systems still chasing a puzzle they would never solve. The hall erupted. Daniel quietly picked up his journal and slipped out the side door before anyone could turn to thank him. A soft wind moved through the academy gardens at sunrise. The silver dust rain had stopped during the night, and the crystal towers of Salathis were bright and clean, catching the first orange light of the new day. The academy was quiet. After the long night of fear and the sudden joy of being saved, most of the students were still asleep. Daniel sat alone on a stone bench in the gardens. He had not slept much either. His journal was open on his knee, and he was making small, simple drawings of the flowers around him. The flowers were strange. They had 6 petals each, and their colors changed slowly as the morning grew brighter, shifting from pale silver to soft gold. A shadow fell across the page. Daniel looked up. Telon Voss was standing in front of him. He was alone. There were no friends behind him, no smirk on his face. His silver skin was dull from lack of sleep. He shifted from one foot to the other, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. He looked uncomfortable in a way Daniel had never seen. For a long moment, Telon said nothing. He seemed to be searching for the right words and not finding any. Daniel waited. He did not speak first. He had learned, on his own world long before he came here, that silence was not always an empty thing. Sometimes silence was a door, and the other person had to open it themselves. Finally, Telon spoke. His voice was low. "Why didn't you say anything?" Daniel closed his journal slowly. "Say what? About what you knew? About what you could do?" Telon looked away, toward the bright towers of the city. "You let us laugh at you for 7 weeks. You sat through the insults. You took the failing setups in chemistry. You said nothing in the dining hall. Why? You could have stopped it any time." Daniel thought about the question for a long while. He looked at the changing flowers. He looked at the morning sky. He looked, at last, at Telon's tired face. "Because none of you asked," he said. Telon blinked. "Asked what?" "Asked who I was," Daniel said. "Asked why I came. Asked anything at all. You looked at me and decided. So I let you. There was no point in arguing with people who had already made up their minds. I was going to be here for 1 year. I came to learn this place. I could not learn it if I was busy fighting all of you." Telon was quiet for a long time. His shoulders dropped a little. "I am not going to apologize," he said finally. "Not the way the headmaster told me to. The words would not be true." Daniel nodded slowly. "I do not need an apology." "Then what do you want?" Daniel looked at him. His eyes were calm, the same calm gray eyes that had looked at Telon on his first day in the Great Hall. "Next time you meet someone new, ask their name before you decide what they are." Telon stood there a moment longer. Then he gave a small, stiff bow. He turned and walked away through the gardens. He did not look back. Daniel watched him go, then opened his journal again and went back to the flowers. Word of what had happened spread across the Concord faster than any official report. Within a single day, the story was on every news screen on every world in the Alliance. A 17-year-old human, the new exchange student at Velmari Academy, had solved in a single night what 50 species had failed to solve in 20 hours. The story shocked the galaxy. In the Concord capital, far away on a world Daniel had never seen, Ambassador Brenna Cole sat at her desk reading the formal letter that had just arrived. The Concord Council was politely asking Earth to please send more exchange students. As many as Earth could spare. The ambassador read the letter twice. Then she smiled a small, quiet smile and began to write a reply. Back at the academy, life went on. The mockery did not just stop. It vanished. Students who had laughed at Daniel now bowed politely when he passed in the halls. Some of them tried to walk with him to class. Daniel was kind to all of them. He still ate alone most of the time. Old habits did not break in a single morning. Mireia found him in the gardens that evening. The sun was setting, and the stars were beginning to show. She sat on the bench beside him without asking. "Are you going to stay?" she asked. "After this year?" Some of the teachers are saying they want to offer you a permanent place. Daniel looked up at the sky. The unfamiliar stars were bright now. He had been here long enough to learn the names of most of them. He could find the constellation the Velmari called the Old Hunter, and the cluster they called the Three Sisters, and the lonely red star they called the Watcher. For a while, he said, there is still a lot to learn. Maria smiled. They sat together in the quiet for a long time. High above the academy, on a balcony above the council chambers, Instructor Haven stood looking out at the same sky. He thought about everything he had read in the archives, and everything he had seen in the past months, and at last he understood what the Concord had missed about humanity. It had never been their strength. It had never been their numbers. It had been the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who watched and learned and waited for the moment when being underestimated became the sharpest weapon of all. Far above the academy moon, Earth's small star burned steadily in the dark. It was not a joke anymore.